This is the Lifespan Motor Development course taught under the Department of Health, Exercise, and Sports Sciences at Texas Tech University. Every PowerPoint presentation will begin with an overview slide like this one. And for this presentation, we will cover the introductory chapter. We will begin with our definition of terms. Second, we will discuss fundamental concepts in human motor development. And third, we will make sure the terms and jargons used throughout the semester will be clearly understood. Motor development is one of three subfields in the broad area called motor behavior. The two other related subfields are motor learning and motor control. These three are interrelated and interdependent, but as academic disciplines, they are separate and have unique contributions to understanding human motor behavior. A good way to distinguish these three fields from each other is to look at the distinctive questions each area typically asks. These questions define what it is that they specifically study. So let's start with this picture. This is a good impetus for questioning. Those of you who juggle, something in this picture pops out. It is more likely the first question that will come to mind, which is, how did he do that? Or how does he do that? Ordinarily, juggling involves three items, or balls in this case. But as you can see in the picture, he is able to do it with 5 balls. So how does he do that? More importantly, is this question a motor learning, a motor development, or a motor control question? This is a motor control question. When one is interested in understanding the mechanism that underlies behavior, the control and coordination issues are front and center. Typically, this will involve probing the mind and body connection or simply trying to understand how the brain functions to allow such a display of skill. If the question, on the other hand, is how to learn it, the domain now has shifted to motor learning. In this case, another word must be invoked, that is, practice. Learning involves deliberate practice. Unlike control, where the concern is the here and now, or what allows the behavior to take place at this instant in time, learning is about accumulating skill. Therefore, it is about systematic practice using some specific technique. For example, there is a technique used by jugglers called cascading to help learners acquire the skill. Then finally, if one's concern is how the skill evolves through a longer period of time, then we are now treading on motor development. Motor development is about looking at history or the changes of the skill across time. Time is an embedded factor, while motor control takes a snapshot of history. Motor development covers a broader picture and asks questions about the past in order to understand the present and predict the future. To a strict set of definitions as provided in your text, this slide, the operative words defining each field has been underlined and highlighted. For example, learning. Practice is the big word. That's why it says acquisition of skill movement with emphasis on practice. Remember these buzzwords. Now, for control, the brain, especially among old school theorists, the brain is front and center in everything. Focus in terms of time is the here and now. Recall that I said motor control is about taking a snapshot right here, right now. And then finally, for our main area of concentration, development, the focus is on changes. In the larger context of the lifespan, how do these changes come about? How does behavior get altered between ages and stages? Certainly, across that window of time, elements of learning and practice may have influence of behavior, just as a succession of control or instantaneous mechanisms may have changed between ages, but all of those are accepted as part of history. Motor development simply chronicles all that has transpired, so it is a longer period of time. Motor development, specifically in terms of a skill, locomotion, or gait across time. Humans have found different ways to solve the transportation problem, from rolling to creeping to crawling to cruising to walking to running, hopping, jumping, skipping. Each of those milestone behaviors are celebrated in motor development. Each has its place in time. So, question is, when does time begin? Does time begin only after birth? In motor development, when does behavior begin to change? When does it take shape and evolve? Each of us is a product of our own history. In other words, we all come with a baggage. Our histories influenced our behaviors. Whatever happened prior to birth is going to affect post birth and thereafter. Expanding time beyond the here and now, it encompasses the period where motor events influence all of our life. From birth to our peak as young, vibrant adults, when we can perform seemingly superhuman feats, to our twilight years when we can enjoy all the fruits of our labor. Hopefully, even in the later years, our motor development shows graceful aging, along with the maintenance of much of our motor skills. Now that we've cleared all of those definitions, let's go to the heart, the fundamental concepts that will be guiding us throughout the semester. They are not specifically identified by the authors, but this is a compilation of motor development concepts arising from research and the general thrust of the field as it continues to mature and contribute to science. Number one, movement is intrinsic to being human. This reflects the primacy of movement in our lives. We study motor behavior because movement is part of what keeps us alive and makes us human. Second, in this course, as the title suggests, we adopt a lifespan perspective. Movement is a significant factor from before birth till the end of life. Third, despite the importance of time in motor development and necessarily age as a concept, age itself does not determine what we can or cannot do. Fourth and final concept, motor skills and achievements influence how and why we persist in an activity, exercise, or sport throughout our lives. Our ability to adhere to these is in part a function of how skillful we are. Each of these will be demonstrated in the following slides. So let's begin with number one. Movement is life. To be human is to move. Movement distinguishes us from the plant kingdom. Movement is life. From the very beginning, as a developing embryo, at the micro levels, movement of cells characterize the development of a new organism. The phenomenon of brain cell migration exemplifies this. Cells that look like they reside at the tail of the neural tube when they first appear may end up migrating and finally settling at the very top or the frontal layer of the developed brain. At the macro level, prior to birth, the growing fetus already has a rich repertoire of movements, which are not only options but in fact are necessities. For example, this includes sucking, whether from the side view or the top view. It may also involve yawning or the kicking behavior, particularly when it comes to kicking. This skill is what prevents the fetus from adhering to the uterine wall. By kicking, this actually ensures its survival and growth. Otherwise, typically when they adhere to the wall, you end up with a baby that will die and not survive. Literally, without movement, the organism dies. By the sixth month, the fetus will have performed more somersaults than that person would do in a lifetime in postnatal environment, except of course gymnasts and divers. For motor behaviorists, nothing validates our course more than the positive effects of movement on the human body. We keep moving not only as a hobby or a pastime, but intrinsically for health, functionality, motivation, and to be holistically human. Again, may I say, you move, you live. You don't move, you die. Second concept, this is a lifespan course after all. Thus, the reference to the lifespan perspective. In terms of coverage, all movement from prior to birth till the end of life has something to contribute, not only to the quality of life, but to the person's character and personal development. To properly understand motor development, we will have to concern ourselves with movements that are unseen inside the womb and movement that mature and evolve towards skillfulness. So we say that we have to begin the active lifestyle as soon as possible, whether that's inside the womb or thereafter. Movements that show decline or dysfunction and those that show adaptation and compensation for all the inevitable losses that time and aging bring are also a matter of importance all throughout life. Lifespan means history is important. So what we do as kids will reflect on what we do as we age. Third, picture this former President George H. Bush as he celebrates his birthday yearly with a skydive jump. Those who age gracefully maintain skills that serve them well in older adulthood. Or perhaps it's the other way around. It's their skills, in fact, that allow them to grow old gracefully. That means pain and disease free for a longer period of time. As much as the passage of time is embedded in all discussions with regard to development, chronological time is not the sole determinant of any behavior. Certainly, it influences the changes that may occur. Development is age related, but certainly not age determined. Age per se does not determine what you and I can or cannot do. Age is just a number, as is frequently said. It will not define us as people. Fourth, what does persistence entail? Where it says here, persistence in activity is mediated by motor achievement. What does it mean for something to be mediated by? What this principle conveys is the association between one's ability to stick to it or to adhere to a sport, activity, or lifestyle is in part because of the motor achievements or the skill sets acquired and developed. One's likelihood to keep playing or practicing is partly hinged on how much progress he or she has made. It seems inconceivable for a person to keep at a sport where they seem to be not making any progress at all. Or to put it quite vulgarly, if you suck at something so bad, you yourself will withdraw, as is what typically happens. It is unlikely that children will have fun, be motivated, and continue to play a sport when no skills or improvements are gained. Vice versa. Here lies the conundrum. No improvement or skill enhancement will occur if they are not sticking to it, or if they are not chosen to play or allowed more time to play. It seems like a self reinforcing or self perpetuating vicious cycle. Those who need more time to practice and play the sport in game situations will tend not to be given much exposure because they lack the skills. Those who have the skills are already skillful, and in all likelihood will be given more opportunities to play, further enhancing their skills. As you can see, when I start putting in the arrows in between, it really becomes evident how this is a vicious cycle. The vicious cycle is succinctly stated here. No achievement, therefore, you do not expect that kid to have any dedication to that activity. However, flip it, if there's no dedication, there's also no achievement. Question is, where do you begin to break the cycle? Now that we have laid the foundation for all the fundamental concepts, in this section we will define the terms that we'll be using as far as the jargon that most motor development people use. As you can see, human development is comprised of 4 domains, one of which is the motor part. The others have to do with cognition, affect or affective parts, and social aspects, and finally the physical domain. As the Venn diagram on the upper left corner shows, these are 4 interrelated and interdependent domains. In addition, development is a broad process involving 2 terms that are related often and often interchanged, but have 2 distinct meanings. While development is a general process of change, that change can come in the form of either growth or maturation. Growth is the physical increase in size, while maturation deals with increase in function. Take note. Often they occur together. Sometimes they can occur without the other. Whenever there is physical growth, always there's a level of maturation transpiring. However, this is where the asymmetrical relationship comes in. One can mature without necessarily displaying any physical growth or increase in size. Next, I'm going to talk about developmental periods. As we attempt to cover the entire text, here are the developmental periods, or the chronological framework that will serve to guide us throughout. These are the terms or labels that are expected to be second knowledge for all ESS 3314 students. These terms will be used liberally during the exams and are assumed as part of your lexicon. We will all be operating from the same page from now on. Neonacy. That is the specific sub-window of time during infancy. From birth to 1 year is infancy, but a special term is given to a neonate from birth to 22 days. This takes on a special meaning, especially for families with premature babies. The term NICU or NICU, Neonatal Intensive Care Unit, speaks of a hospital care unit where the care for newborns is a recognized specialization. Childhood is from 1st to 18/20 years because it makes a distinction between genders. Boys become men on average at 20 years, while girls become women at 18. The milestone marker for this transition is specific to growth. What tides us over from childhood to adulthood? Well, remember this. Cessation of growth. When you stop growing physically. In other words, you stop increasing in size, at least vertically, based on your skeleton. It typically signals the end of childhood and the beginning of adulthood. The disparity between genders indicate that the girls finish their growth spurts ahead of the boys. This is physically and anatomically determined by the fusion of the growth plates. of the bones. Once more, the gender differences are reflected in the subset stage of childhood called adolescence. The precocity of girls begin during adolescence. They are already ahead as early as mid-childhood with respect to growth. As we turn to adulthood, adulthood is generally divided into three phases: young, middle, and older adulthood. Typically, young adulthood, that's the prime of one's life, as most people like to think of it, is between 18 to 40 years old. Thus, 18 is marked as a starting point to include both genders, men and women. Others would like to peg older adulthood alongside retirement, which is 65. But for the purpose of demographic groupings, we will follow this developmental age classification used in your text.